The remarks suggest how deep the consciousness of caste is and what its historical basis is and how it continues in Indian modernity. The idea was to really understand what the real story is. It's not about political charges which flow back and forth. We are seeing that on television every day. This particular community should do with who they worship and who their icons may be. That is exactly what has gone throughout history. That is boiling over as there is some level of empowerment, then kind of limits are breached, and then others feel threatened. Their ideas of divinity is challenged, which is really the core of this debate again.
Well, joining me now to talk about the current tussle over the legacy of B.R. Ambedkar is Anshul Avijit, who is a spokesperson of the Congress party, also someone who has written extensively about this issue, about the legacy of B.R. Ambedkar, and about the current controversy as well. Anshul, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on Free Press Journal.
A great pleasure to be here, Frida.
So, Anshul, you are watching all of this happening right now in Parliament, right? This tussle between the BJP and the Congress. Some would say this is looking more like a, competitive loyalty towards B.R. Ambedkar. It's taken such an ugly turn with even physical scuffles now happening. How are you reading these developments? Is it really an attempt to show who is more loyal to Ambedkar, or there is larger politics behind it?
No, I think, Frida, discussions on caste always take an ugly turn, and we've seen that throughout. Even when the issue of caste census was broached, there were all
Yeah.
kinds of accusations and defense. I think no discussion about caste, is one where it's smooth and there is a consensus because it's so deeply embedded in our consciousness. It pervades our society to such an extent. And that is why I always think that such discussions are always a case in point. They go beyond the personalities and they go beyond even the remarks. The remarks suggest how deep the consciousness of caste is and what its historical basis is and how it continues in Indian modernity. We try and resist it. We thought we'd done away with it with the introduction of democracy, of the constitution, of the vows we'd taken at the time of independence. That listen, we're fighting two battles. One is against colonialism, so there was decolonization, but the other one, the graver one, was social injustice. That we haven't fulfilled yet. So that battle rages on, and any reference to that battle uh, draws, I think, sharp fault lines. There are people who mock, there are people who demean, there are people who patronize, even without realizing it. And I think that this debate, this tussle which is going on, reflects really what is going on in India. That's really the big question. What you do with caste, you haven't done away with the caste system. Discrimination
Yeah.
still persists. What are you going to do with it?
Hmm. Anshul, you're saying in one of your articles, and I think I've just taken a bit of it, where you're saying comments like this and referring to Amit Shah's comment where he says, if the Congress party is repeatedly taking Ambedkar's name, if that many times they would have taken God's name, they would have reached heaven. I mean, loosely translated. But, you are saying that these comments will deprivilege chosen icons and it will dehistoricize their loyalist. Why do you say that? How do you explain that?
No, so the idea was to really understand what the real story is. It's not about political charges which flow back and forth. We are seeing that on television every day. I think history is witness to the fact that how much what party or what government in power has done for the cause of social justice, what laws have been enacted. And we'll go into that in a minute. But I think the
Yeah.
deeper question is that of discrimination, which is there
Hmm.
in which, even unwittingly, there are remarks that are passed that are deeply offensive and discriminatory, even
But why
without
is it?
people
I mean,
knowing
it's
it.
the idea of, say, glorifying or defying B.R. Ambedkar. Do you think that if Mr. Amit Shah has said that that is not desirable, is that offensive to the community at large?
No, you have a Dalit
Equating
pamphlet.
B.R. Ambedkar to a god is something that Amit Shah has said should not be done. Is that your interpretation?
No, no,
That
who is
he's not
anyone
a
else to
god?
tell? No, no, this is exactly what we are fighting against and what this caste battle is against. Who is anyone to tell what this particular community should do with who they worship and who their icons may be? That is exactly what has gone throughout history. So with the denial
Okay.
of temple entry, with the denial of worshipping gods which were universal, which
Hmm.
every community thought was their own. You don't even have the right to worship whom you think they're their own. Even that results in castigation and snide remarks and mockery. I mean, that is exactly the root of the problem, right? That
Okay.
others should determine who you're going to worship, what you should eat, what you should wear, how you're going to behave, that all responses
Hmm.
should be in a particular way. That is what the historical legacy of India has been, and that is what the terrible legacy, curse, I would say, of Indian modernity is. That kind of thinking still pervades. So people say remarks. I won't go into the nature of these remarks because we will talk about the nature of divinity and how it exists. But people even say remarks even without meaning it. There could be
Hmm.
lapses, but I'm saying it's so deeply embedded in consciousness,
Hmm.
a caste and discrimination
So
of
you're saying the
historical
mindset is
privileges.
exposed? Are you saying the
Yes,
mindset
it's
is
not exposed.
exposed?
It always was. This is another case
Hmm.
in point,
Hmm.
and it is in the forum. It is in the house. It is by a extremely senior person, the number two in the cabinet or in the government, and therefore that makes it even worse. And when you are espousing the cause of social justice, and when you let these comments slip through, we can
Hmm.
understand what the kind of mindset that pervades this country, and that is really
Hmm.
unfortunate. That's what I'm getting at. That's the real story, you know.
Right.
So we can
Right.
trade charges back and forth, who did what didn't do. I have my entire list of things that we did or didn't do, or they must be having their own kind of accusations and recriminations or
Yeah.
whatever.
That's what both sides actually are quoting examples. And the other author, whose piece also appeared in one of the leading newspapers today, along with yours, says that the attempt is to selectively quote those instances where, of course, the BJP is saying that, the fact that B.R. Ambedkar was at loggerheads with Nehru on a number of occasions is not hidden to anyone. It's an open secret. And of course, the Congress party also cites instances where RSS burnt effigies of B.R. Ambedkar. So it's a process of selectively quoting these instances of insulting the memory of Babasaheb.
No, that debate can rage on, right? I'm more interested in the comments made and their particular connotations and how they slip through. I mean, there was obviously a kind of a reference to an imbalance of divinity about who you should worship, about control, about imprisonment. That's much more important. That's the real story. Icons are there. I mean, you can critique them. Nobody's infallible, one would think. But then for some others, their gods are infallible, right? Try
But the
impinging
party
or
you represent, Anshul, was opposed to many of Ambedkar's policies, was opposed to reservation. Are you not, going to also call that out? That today you're going all out to express your loyalty, but what about back in time when so
that's
many
a,
of yeah,
yeah,
the
Afrida,
reservation
that's a
policy, for
gross
instance, was opposed tooth and nail.
uh, uh, really, Afrida, that is a gross representation, misrepresentation of what the Congress party always stood for. Remember that reservations as a policy was enacted in the First Amendment to the Constitution. I mean, the Parliament, with Congress in its majority, actually brought that through. There is no question. My grandfather, Babu Jagjeevan
Hmm.
Ram, fought tooth and
Hmm.
nail for the idea of not just reservations, but the idea of social justice. He was always a part of the Congress, most of his life anyway.
Hmm.
He was the one, and the Congress party with him backed promotions in reservations, right? Until there was an interjection by the Supreme Court much later. There were laws that were enacted, the untouchability laws, these were all done by the Congress party. Not just reservations for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, but reservations for women in the Panchayati Raj was brought by the Congress party. I think history will bear witness to what the Congress has done. So there is no need to go into these justifications because then it becomes some sort of a trading match, and the better spin doctor, just gets away with it for that moment. It doesn't matter. That's not the real story. I'm saying the Congress has done what it has done. It is in history will bear witness to what it has done, right? About reservations, about protection of the interests of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, about reservations for women, for instance. We talk about that, about introducing reservations for OBCs, reservations for women in parliament as well. if you're talking about that broad scope of reservations and emancipation and gender equity, social justice and gender equity as well, they probably go hand in hand, right? Uh, about that, the
Yeah.
history will bear witness to it. You can keep trading
But
charges.
today, Anshul,
But
let's be fair about this. Let's call a spade a spade. Today, the tussle, the focus is or not is actually not about appropriating Baba Saheb's legacy. It's about appropriating the Dalit vote, which has become crucial for both sides, isn't it? It's about the OBC and the Dalit vote, and that is again something which has become way too obvious, election after election. That here is sort of a vote bank which neither side wants to let go of, which is the
no,
what the real fight is about. How would you respond to that observation?
no, the real fight is in a democracy. The real fight is always to win the trust of the electorate, whichever community they come from. I mean, that is the duty of the people in power or those aspirants to go and convince them, listen to us. We've got the policies. We will protect your interests. We will further your interests. That is a part of democracy. That's how the democratic process always works. I mean, to say that, I mean, I know that, vote bank seems like a very hardened sort of instrumentalist word. It's not one I would like to use. But earning the trust of the electorate is certainly what every party should do. It has to do it. Otherwise, it will not gain power and it will not be able to protect their interests. Whether it ultimately does what it does in the end is another matter altogether. But the wheel of democracy always works on the fact that you have to reach out, you have to convince people and say, trust in us. So I don't find anything wrong in any party does it. That is a level playing field, right? Of course, the manner which you do it and all may be arguably different. You may pull down governments, you may do all kinds of other things. There may be sort of interruptions in the processes. That's another point altogether. But the
Yeah.
basic foundation of democracy is going to the electorate and seeking their vote. I don't see any harm in doing that. In fact, democracy itself as a project will fail if that doesn't happen.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, of course. My question was more about invoking Baba Saheb's legacy selectively and then, trying to serve political ends. And you're saying that, okay, if that is the nature of politics, and if uh, there is a debate over the one community and their welfare, and that is always welcome. If both parties are interested in uplifting the marginalized and the minority, the Dalit community being one of them, that is also welcome. But my question to you again is about what we see right now happening. And as a neutral observer, it almost seems like if both sides actually support Ambedkar's policies, want to hail his brand of politics, what is the fight really all about? That it has led to this sort of an physical tussle, a scuffle in parliament, and protest versus protest. How are you interpreting this? What is the main bone of contention as of now in parliament between the BJP and the Congress, between the opposition and the Treasury bench?
So then we come down to the foundations of Indian society. I mean, I'm glad you asked this question. Uh, the
Hmm.
real fight is about social justice. Who are the icons of social justice? What did they stand for? And who supports them and who honors them, right? Who demeans them, who mocks them, who patronizes them, and who honors them? That is the real story here. And if you don't do that, if you don't respect the icons of the community, which are their earned icons, and these are actually historical figures, right? Uh, whether it's my grandfather or Ambedkar or even Guru Ravidas or the legions of people who consider their own, there are historical figures who've earned their place in the Dalit pantheon, right? They've earned their pedestal there. I mean, if you demean them, right? If you mock them, unwittingly or directly or implicitly, it doesn't matter, because they all betray certain things. If it's a direct thing, you know that you're openly casteist. If it's implicit, you know that there is a kind of a caste consciousness which is pervading the society, which is unable, and this Indian modernity is unable to shrug it off. So it's a false
Yeah.
modernity anyway, right? So that is the real question. It's not about, you can interpret it in political ways. There is a politics, but I am trying to understand the real story, because the future will not be sorted. The questions will always remain if these questions remain. tomorrow these tussles might die down. There might be some kind of truce. Something may continue. Will continue with all this. But the real story and the real questions will remain unanswered. That is the caste system, its legacy, and the kind of consciousness that breeds discrimination. That is what the story is all about. And that is what I'm interested in answering. And I'm horrified and quite alarmed at the nature of discrimination that exists all over. I mean, I see it even before my eyes. Forget about the political, people make comments. I see it all around me. When people let comments sit through, which betray a
But if
deep-seated
Congress is
casteism,
the
and they're even
party who
unaware
can
of it.
change that, why is it that you've not been able to retain that political support of the Dalit and the OBC community? It is slipping away. It is depleting. The support that the Congress party had from the Dalit community over the years, it was the biggest supporter. The community always voted for the Congress for very many years. But why did it then slip? Why did it deplete? If you are
Yeah, that's
saying that there is always an attempt to protect, to uplift the community itself is not electorally displayed that loyalty towards Congress.
no, sure. So again, you want to narrow it down to politics? Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, there might be disenchantment with every community over people who they previously voted with. Every
Hmm.
party has got to go into the reasons for that disenchantment, or they're shifting. It may not even be a disenchantment. It may be some sort of I don't know, some organic shift. Uh, the reasons the party will have to introspect and find that out. That doesn't that doesn't mean you forsake your cause, the essential cause of social justice, because somehow the electorate has become and started working. Then you urge the other party whom it's bestowed its trust on to work even more actively in protecting their interests. uh, the responsibility of the opposition to ensure that increases all the more so, right? So this is not a question of yeah, we are talking about brute politics. We are talking about electoral politics, and I know I don't necessarily ever. While this is very relevant questions, I never necessarily want to reduce the Dalit question and the question of social discrimination and social justice to about instrumentalist politics. I mean, that's just a narrow view. We can't ever see 100 years ahead. I mean, we made a pledge during independence, right? That we will have a society which is free of discrimination. We made those laws. We had reservations. We had, the Anti-Untouchability Act. We made the Atrocities Act. We made, and there were a series of engagements, right? There were a series of
Yeah.
policies. Where are those policies now? So then I will now talk about, if you then if there's that engaging in a political discussion, then we'd like to hit back and talk about how the mere reference to caste discrimination is being obliterated from NCRT course books. So the argument that we've always held so long about this government, about them being anti-reservation, whatever their defense is that if you remove Dalit writers from the course of Delhi University, if you obliterate caste discrimination references in NCRT, you feel that there is no discrimination in ancient India at all. That India does not have a caste issue at all. That there was always social equity, and if there is always social equity, then what is the need for reservations? There is an argument that you see that is persists throughout the other side of the ideological divide regarding the question of social justice. That's what I'm really interested in. But
Hmm.
far more than that, fine, that these are political questions, expunge history books, rewrite history. These are questions that must be encountered. We do them politically every day on TV debates. Yeah, we bring the government to task and challenge these questions. My other questions, and this is perhaps where my academic interest or other deeper questions about belonging to the particular lineage comes in. What do we do about caste? How do we make it go away? How do we stop discrimination? How do we lessen this kind of consciousness that breeds discrimination and iniquity and injustice, and then also leads to atrocities or apathy at best? How do we do away with that? Whoever is to blame, that remains a central question.
Right. I was, in conclusion, I just wanted to quote what the grandson of B.R. Ambedkar, Mr. Prakash Ambedkar, says, that it's actually neither side is really interested in addressing what you just mentioned, to doing away with the scourge of caste system. It suits their politics to keep it alive, to keep that pot boiling. So if you are saying that, the ultimate cause, the ultimate motive should be to address the discrimination, to address the injustices, what is the way forward according to you? What do you expect from the ruling party today that
No,
will convince you that they would work towards that end?
the pot is boiling because caste system still exists and discrimination is still rampant. I mean, you can hardly expect, and it should actually more happen more often. I'm not talking about references like this, but discussions on caste, right, and how to do away with that system. But the pot is boiling because the caste system still exists, because that is boiling over. As there is some level of empowerment, then kind of limits are breached and then others feel threatened. Their ideas of divinity is challenged, which is really the core of this debate again. So, I would think that these references are unfortunate, but what they've done is again highlighted what we want to do all the time: the central issue of caste in our society, its pervasive and sinister influence, and how we can think of a plan to get rid of it. I mean, free the people of this kind of mindset that still pervades our society and which is consciously or unconsciously sort of manifest time and again all over the place, in streets, in workplaces, and in the parliament itself. The parliament is not it's a mirror of society. It is not, it doesn't drop from Mars or somewhere. So it's obviously
Right.
going to reflect what the society thinks and does. I hope that the debates will continue. I hope the remarks will become less and less, and I hope discrimination goes away so we can put an end to this and actually embrace Indian modernity in the truest, purest possible sense that once we made a pledge for.
Let's hope that, the things that you are hoping for, I would like to express that that should be the intent for both sides, whoever is in power, at the state level or at the central level. The scourge, like you put it, of caste system, of discrimination must be put an end to. Anshul, Avijit, thank you so much for joining me here on Free Press Journal.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.